Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Today, there is essentially no news scheduled out of the U.S. during the hours that we are interested in. I think we have one auction. We have a few short-term auctions and a 3-year note auction. That's about it. We also have Trump on the calendar, but not till 4 o'clock after the cash close. And really, that's it for today. An ECB speaker, but really nothing on the calendar today. Now, tomorrow we have CPI, which is our most important data point this week. We also get the EIA, petroleum status report. Then Thursday we get jobless and PPI, and Friday consumer sentiment. But today, essentially nothing scheduled. So that's going on. Let's move on to our charts. Okay, here we are on our chart of the S&P 500, full session daily candles. What have we been talking about on this chart? Well, we've recognized that we we have this 58.21 CVPOC region right here, which is the most traded price going back to January of 2024, potentially longer. But regardless, this price, which is this red line here, has kind of acted like the fulcrum of a lever, in my opinion, where we we didn't want to trade it, and then all of a sudden we just got to the other side, and now we don't want to trade the other side. So this area is like the fulcrum of a lever. That's what it's been acting like. And so we've pushed above it. We found support on tests below, and we've continued our sort of channel higher, grind higher out of this balance. The 6,000 figure is sort of like the obvious thing that's going on up here. It's, a millennium figure. This is a number that everybody knows. For us as intraday traders of the S&P 500, we talk about the 58.2175s. That's an important level. And that's what we talk about. We're very, super granular. But for others, like the larger population, for example, my dad, who's out there listening right now, my dad is going to pay more attention to, are we above or below 6,000? And so you have to be aware that that most of the population that pays attention to the S&P 500, they're not going to care about, what prices we're talking about, but they will see 6,000. And so anyway, that's the big psychological number up here. And it was 6,000 on the button, was yesterday's RTH low, which we're one time framing higher in the RTH session. We'll go over that. But right here, what we're just kind of noticing is that 6,000 figure was here, and we've just kind of resisted pullbacks. And now here we are just kind of tap dancing above it. And the question that inquiring minds want to know is, does this dance continue higher to take out all the rest of these targets that we have up here, or do we revert lower to check any unauctioned prices below here and potentially even get back to the most traded price in this balance area, which is the 59.16s. Regardless, that's what we're seeing on this chart. That's what I'm seeing on this chart. Let's move on to another chart. All right, here we are on our market profile chart. This is the S&P 500, obviously, RTH only. We talked a lot about this balance area over here that's now out of focus, and we're looking at this situation here now. Yesterday, I gave a lot of attention to this day. And I pretty much said if we just stay above this day or resist pullbacks into the range for the most part, ideally above this prior day. As long as we stayed above here, I would expect some upward excursion, and the target would be the prior day's high. And we got pretty much that. It was tradable. There were opportunities to take trades with that bias that were profitable. So it worked out. Not really a, very lackluster day, but hey, that was a day where if you were trading, you could have done well based on decent plans. Regardless, moving on, what do we have today? So we held above that yesterday, preserved this little excess, and we did manage to close just a bit higher. So the theme of just inching value higher is still in effect. And looking at the profile that we're left with here, let's zoom in just a little bit here. So we opened here and we tested higher and lower and ended up settling in the middle, just a little bit above the prior day's high. Okay, access here, somewhat weaker high here. We got to the 27s, 31s were the price we were looking at, and then potentially 50s. Didn't quite get there during RTH, but we did take that price out overnight. So those prices have been tested, and we've tested above the prior day's high already, and now we're reverting. So what do we have to what are we considering today? Really, I'm still going to give a lot of attention to this price, and really this distribution of yesterday's trade is going to be really important here for me. It's just going to be the same thing. See, we had this battle here. We had the battle and sellers seemed to have won, but then it was just a fake out and buyers, we got right back above. And I'm treating this distribution here in kind of a smaller way, very similarly, meaning that just generally speaking, if we open around wherever we open, if we are able to get above this distribution and start making progress, then I will be looking at the area at these two highs, the 25 to 27 region as a target. If we get that, then the 31s. And if we still are doing the same kind of grindy thing, then we could look for potentially the 50s. The 40s are the overnight high. But if we lose, let me get rid of this. If we lose this area, like if this little fulcrum of the lever stops being the support and we drop through and it becomes resistance, then I'll be looking for a take of this low, which I think will be easier to get. And then if we get this low, that'll be another target, and then potentially this VPOC. Regardless, that's what I'm thinking. Let's move on to a smaller time frame chart and plan more specifically. Okay, here is our intraday chart of the S&P 500. Let's discuss what we're looking at here. Excuse me. So this lavender section here is our overnight that we put in since 6 p.m. last night. And the thing that we want to notice right out of the gates is we have megaphoned from yesterday's RTH session. Here's yesterday's RTH high and low. Our high was the 27s. Our low was 6,000 on the button. We opened here. We pushed higher. This was, I think there was some news related to this, some China-US talks which are going on. So that's kind of our unscheduled news to be aware of. But regardless, we ripped higher. Hit a clear offer, because look at this distribution. See, that's an offer. That's somebody selling. There was nothing here through any of that. There was nothing there. We just went up until we hit the offer, and then we just chopped and chopped and chopped and decided that we went back because we didn't have not enough buyers to fill the offer yet. So we had to go down and find more buyers. But the key thing here is we pushed higher above yesterday's high and then ripped lower below yesterday's high. We call that a megaphone. It doesn't portend well for directional trading. For me, right out of the gates, like before even getting directional on what could happen here, I got to tell you that my primary expectation is going to be some tightening. Some tightening here, because we've tested. For us as traders, we want to see the market kind of tighten up, energy kind of like concentrate, and then break and start to run in one direction. Then we can trade in that direction after a break and run. For most, if we're trading, we can trade outside in, obviously, but but this is generally what a lot of traders like to see and trade, because it's an easier, more intuitive trade, and that's what we like. But when we see this, it's like we're in the stage of the game where we've tested higher, tested lower, and for me, the next logical step is not to stretch further, it's to tighten up and kind of concentrate that energy for the next move. So really, that's what I'm primarily expecting to have happen today. I'm really like the key target for a day trade for me is going to be one of the overnight extremes, and I'll have targets ahead of them. My targets ahead of the high will obviously be the overnight VPOC and this stock zone, and my target ahead of the low will be the 6,000 figure, potentially prior week settle, depending on where we are. And here, and I will, so any internal trades I get into, which to be honest, I might not, because I don't like to try to trade from the middle when I see the market in a stance that suggests tightening, but those will kind of be the buttressing areas. And I will expect this trade to kind of tighten, at least initially, and then maybe we get a break today, but just based on how the ES is lined up, I'm expecting this range to tighten a bit today. So that's really my primary expectation. Let's discuss what happens if we get a break. However, I'll discuss a break lower first, although because I'm considering this to be fairly random the way we're set up. There's no edge, in my opinion, to higher or lower. A slight edge to higher because that's what we've been doing, but we're kind of choppy in here. So anyway, if we get a break of the low, keep in mind the day that I was talking about, where are we? This is the day I was talking about. So we have this zone and this zone kind of as the bounds to this day. And so the trade that would, that could line up, that could appear, that would probably be the best is any kind of a break lower to target this NFP SOC at 71s. So how would that look? We'd have to see. Now we took out the high, press lower. So if we start to try to rally here, the target that we're going to be looking for, or the test we'll be looking for, will be yesterday's RTH high to try to retest it either during RTH or again. And if we fail to get that, if this 31 zone shuts us off and we fall back into this zone with an impulse ideally, and then find ourselves unable to do anything else, then that could suggest that we might see a reversion lower and a test of the 6,000s to break the one time framing and or overnight low. Now, here's the thing. If we get exactly that, it wouldn't shock me at all to see us just hit this zone and lick check right back to the middle. That would not be anything that surprises me. So we need to be aware of that. However, if we don't, if all of these buyers above 6,000, anybody who bought above this area, if they all realize that they were a little bit early and we start to unwind, then I would be looking for, of course, this zone, which is the lower bounds of the day I've been talking about. So the trade would be, losing this zone with some authority, testing the overnight low and finding no buyers. Then we'd be looking for this zone, the 80s, and the key target for a push lower would then be the 70 zone right here, which is our non-farm payroll SOC. So this would be the key target on a break of the 90s for me, which could be the most interesting trade. This also could happen really fast. There's a strong possibility that could happen really fast, and then it just becomes a test that then lick checks around the 70s somewhere in this area, and then reverts just straight back up to balance. And that could actually be a great trade if that happens. It may or may not happen. We don't know. What happens if the opposite happens, where we actually get this trade where we drop to the 70s, we look like we're going to revert, but all of a sudden we continue lower? Well, first off, I think that would surprise everybody. I'm not expecting it, but but if it happens and we get kicked out of range, we hit the 70s and then we can't get back up, then I would just be going zone to zone with mid-century as the next key figure. And any excursion below that, I would still just go zone to zone, because I'm not expecting a big excursion today, although it's possible. And every time I say I'm not expecting something, sometimes that happens. So we need to be aware of it, because that, like I said, the surprising thing does happen sometimes, and it's often the best trade. So we should be ready for that. But regardless, that would be the surprise for me. If we get the whole way to 70s and then we keep working lower, that would be a big surprise. Might need news for it, but regardless. Now, what happens? What about the push higher? I think the push higher would be a lot less interesting because it's so telegraphed and we know what's going on. And I'm tending to think there are going to be just profit takers waiting at above every high. That's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong. But anyway, how could that look? Well, we could very easily just put in, we sort of have this kind of choppy lows here. And this is suggesting to me that there just are less people willing to sell down here right now. So if that continues right now, we get maybe another test, it doesn't go anywhere, and we start seeing that beach ball being pushed underwater vibe to how the price action's happening. And then we push up and we get to this zone. And instead of hitting resistance, as I mentioned before, we find traction and we hold, we take out the or we take out the POC and the overnight high. Now here's the key. If we do that and then you see us in this area either holding or not pulling back, then that would green light me to look to start taking out the targets above. We have the 2024 yearly close in the 44s, the mid-century, the 50s. That would be a key target up in here. And this is really my key target zone, just above the overnight high, because there's so much static here and there's so many people that are just buying these dips and then selling these highs that I'm expecting there to be, as I said, resistance, and this would be my key target and potential reversion from here. If we get these highs, then and we start to really fall back, then holding this 31 zone, I would expect, if we hold this 31 zone, that would signal to me the upward momentum is still good. We're likely to keep pushing highs. But if we fall below this 31 zone, then I would expect reversion back to this developing weekly VPOC, prior week settle region. And then we'd be right back in the middle of everything. And so anything could happen again. How could I be wrong here? Well, we certainly could see us just push through here, all of a sudden get to this area and everyone thinks, oh, there should be profit takers like John just said, but if there aren't and we start ripping higher, then we're looking for these naked VPOCs in the next zone. That's a possibility too. I think that one, that one, I'd be a little less shocked to see that, just because that would be super uncomfortable for so many people, because, a lot of people are long, but who knows? But regardless, those are the possibilities I'm seeing today. I'm going to wrap it up here because I'm going really long on a day when the market is not really showing us that much. So just to tie in a bow again today, I'm really waving the caution flag here based on this megaphoning action we saw overnight. And so what we want to do first, make sure this thing isn't just going to tighten and just do this all day. And if it does do that, then I'm not going to trade that. I'll just wait to see if it breaks towards one of the targets mentioned. I'm less likely to play outside in here unless it would be some type of a test lower and then lick check higher in accordance with the trend, but I'm less likely to sell up here, at least on the initial push. But that's really the big key today, is first make sure that we're not going to just megaphone. Don't try to play price exploration if we're just kind of megaphoning. And if we are going to break, know your targets and know how you want to engage. That's what I got for you, 18 minutes. Way too long, sorry about that, but sometimes on these days that are a little bit more ambiguous, you end up talking more. But that's what I got for you. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I hope your wonderful day continues. And most importantly, I hope you find some way to improve your trading today that is not dependent upon your P&L. That's what I got for you. Ciao.